that probably has something to do with the fact that I just walk the dogs in the 29-degree temps. But I just spent some time feeling like I'm looking really old today. So, yeah, well, if that's the case, it is what it is, I guess. um, so today, okay, somewhere in the next hour, my dad's gonna meet the hospice people at the house to get the equipment to bring my grandfather home. And it sounds like, okay, my dad said that when he talked to my grandpa yesterday at the hospital, he's convinced that he is going home today so he can die tomorrow. And mind you, we've been talking about how he's gonna die my entire life. So, and the past 3 months, since like August 14th, I believe it was, because I had a concert that week, or a couple days afterwards. I was like, I'm not going to my concert just because this whole situation was going on. Still went to my concert. It was Five Finger Death Punch and Marilyn Manson. I was like, I'm not missing this for the world. Sorry. I wanted to go. Like, I had concert tickets for Five Finger Death Punch back during the pandemic, and then it got postponed, and then it got canceled, and I was so pissed. So I was like, I am not going to skip this concert because he's talking about, he was talking again that something was going to kill him. It's like, well, that's what I've been hearing all my life, and it still hasn't happened. So, still going to the concert, and I went, and I loved it, and I had fun by myself. Because my brother was supposed to go with me, and then wasn't able to go, so that was a bummer. But it was kind of funny because my mom was all sorts of pissed at him because he bailed. I was pissed because it was short notice that he bailed, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, I'll be fine. I'm still going. And I put a message on the roller derby group to see if anybody might want to go with me, and knowing it was real short notice and it wasn't likely, and never heard back from anybody. So I was like, you know what? Screw it. I'm just going by myself. And so I did. And it was funny because, my mom's trying to drag me into her drama and being all stressed out about me going somewhere by myself, especially to a concert. And I was just like, yeah, these people aren't ones that I have any reason to feel concerned about. So, yeah, I'm going to go and enjoy it. And I did. And only slightly got lost at the end when I went out a different gate than I thought I was going out, and ended up in the wrong parking lot. Just sent me on a long scenic route, or scenic walk after dark. No big deal. And I got there eventually, so but she was trying to pull him into that drama too. And don't you feel bad about making your baby sister go by herself to this concert? And he was like, those aren't the types of people she has to worry about. It's like, yes. When we talked about it later, she tried to throw that at me again, and when I said that, she said, that's the same thing your brother said. It's like, because these are not people that we have to be worried about being around. These people have their own shit that they've been working through, most likely, and they're not the ones you have to worry about. They're preoccupied with other shit. So, it's like that the community of, people that listen to various types of metal, it's like, I'm pretty sure everybody's been through their own version of hell. And, like the people, my mom types in the world that have been talking about, all the ways the music's going to send us to hell and all the other things, My brother and I were talking, and he said, it's been a long time ago, but he said she used to tell him that Creed was especially bad, and he's like, yeah. Pretty sure that dude was like a Christian or something, wasn't he? And yeah, I don't know. But she was all convinced, and it's like, just because of the type of music, that's stupid. So, yeah, but we didn't get dragged into her drama over the concert thing. And yeah, had a message popped up. It distracted me for a second. Okay, so my dad was saying that my grandpa was convinced yesterday that he's coming home today so he can die tomorrow. It's like, well, if it happens, at some point it has to be okay, damn it. Oh, God. I think that's why this whole thing is so frustrating, because we've literally been locked into this cycle of obsessing over death for my entire life. And now, obviously, we're closer than we've ever been to it, but never once has he been grateful. And I said something to my mom about that the other day. She's like, you don't know that. It's like, I've never once heard him say anything about being grateful. His cancer was in remission the multiple times that it was always, this is going to be the shit that kills me. This is going to be the shit that kills me. And meanwhile, he's watching all of his, good friends die off around him, and he's still not dying. But I mean, he's already outlived most of them, and whatever. I told my brother last night, it's like, it would be really shitty if he passed away on December 4th, since that's both mom and my sister-in-law's birthday. But I told him today, it's like, I almost expect that it kind of would make sense for him to go that day, because my mom is the one who's, like, aside from my grandma, been the most closely tied into his bullshit and yielding to every whim because he's obsessively concerned about everything. And yeah, and then she started just a little bit ago, she sent a message trying to guilt us, well, specifically guilt him and my sister-in-law, because there's the big group text, well, with all of the family, so there's 5 of us in it, saying that he's making gurgling sounds in his throat and blah blah blah, and he really needs to see Gracie because he just loves Gracie so much. And my brother's like, we'll see. So, and he's not giving into my mom's shit, and I'm not either. And of course, my sister-in-law is not. Of course, she's not my mom's number one fan anyway. They have that stereotypical mother-in-law, daughter-in-law relationship. And my mom sees her as some kind of enemy because she's the reason my brother isn't yielding to all of my mother's whims now. So, yeah. But here we are. And he sent a message. What was it? She mentioned the gurgling throat, or gurgling sounds in his throat and all this, and sent me. I'm ignoring the group chat, and I just saw my brother send a message saying things are getting spicy in the group chat. It's like, uh-oh. What am I missing? Might have to do a short video today, kids. Anyway. So, yeah. Which, I don't even know where my dad stands. I think he's still roped in enough on my mom's bullshit that, he's still trying to navigate his way out of it. And then when he talks to me and my brother and realizes we're not giving into her bullshit, then he has like a different spin on it. But then as soon as he is around her again, then he gets kind of pulled back into it. So I think that's kind of what's happening there, but I don't know. I just don't know at this point. And he made a comment last night, and I was like, I would have, he made a comment that made me question what he had told me the other day, because he had sounded a certain kind of way when he made the comment, and then yesterday he was sounding like he thought she might be thinking a certain kind of way when this is all said and done, kind of stuff. I don't know. Family drama. So far over it. I can't even tell you. But, yeah. You know, my mom asked me earlier if I could take my grandma to her hair appointment tomorrow. Do we think that she's actually going to be able to get to go to her hair appointment? Yeah, I don't know. Because on the one hand, if he does finally go, then she's going to want to have her hair done for the funeral. On the other hand, he ain't going to want to let her go when he's home in that condition. You know, he hadn't let her leave the hospital in 2 days. So, I don't know. But yeah, before she was able to go home and sleep in her own bed in the past couple days since I was last there and pissed my mom off. I think that was Saturday. I don't know. Something like Saturday. Yeah, because I didn't go yesterday. And I'm pretty sure today is Monday, but at this point I'm not entirely 100%. Everything freaking runs together with this group. So yeah. I watched a Nordic Light tarot reading earlier, and she had 3 piles, and of course, pick a card. And I felt really drawn to the first pile, and I felt really drawn to the third pile. But it's like, there was also something about the second pile. It's like, it was one I wanted to push it away, but at the same time, it's like, I know there's a message in that one too. So I just watched the whole thing, right? And like the first one was like, when you get through this phase kind of a thing. That's how it felt, was when I get through this phase of, you know, what's going on right this second with my family, then pile 1 will be where I'm at, right? And then on grander scheme of things, pile 3 was like, this is where we're going. But then pile 2, oh my gosh, it just made me think of like everything with this family and everything that's been going on. It's like, yeah. Okay, so obviously if you saw my Thanksgiving fun day, not so much, video, yeah, you know, he hijacked Thanksgiving to make it about almost dying, and then didn't die. Came close as he's ever been, supposedly. That might be the case, but, you know, since we're at this point, but I don't know. But then he did at least make sure that it was a shitty day nonetheless. More for his wife and daughters than anybody else, but, you know, still. The rest of us at least got to eat. They went straight over to the hospital and couldn't eat because, well, something was going on. And then the next day he's rallied around again, and yeah, of course, because they were there, and, you know, they stayed there with him. I think, I'm not so sure they didn't all stay. Like, my grandma didn't stay Thanksgiving night with him at the hospital. She did stay last night and the night before. I don't know what my mom's sisters did. I would be surprised if the middle sister didn't stay with her also, but I know she was there all night with him. Because literally every time he's been in the hospital, she has stayed every single night with him at the hospital, except for one, and then she felt really, really bad because she didn't stay there that night too. So yeah, so I mentioned the other day that I pissed her off because I told her at some point it has to be okay for him to go, and that it wasn't helpful for her to keep saying, I don't know what we're going to do when you die, and we have so much you still need to teach us, and blah blah blah. And I told her that was not helpful and that she was going to have to be okay with him going at some point. And then, of course, she just got really, really mad at me. So last night I pulled some cards for the energy for the week. And the first card that popped out was hostilities. It's like, oh, I know where that's from. And then I got happy family, was kind of confused. It's like, it came out kind of like trying to go at an angle, and I think like it wasn't entirely up, it wasn't entirely down, but anytime I flipped it to kind of try to have it tell me where it was going, it was kind of all over the place. It's like, I don't think it knows. And I think it's, since me and my brother and, his group, and then even my dad kind of to it a little bit, to an extent, is like we're trying to shift out of this toxic family energy, and she's trying to pull us back into it. It's just like, but I feel like that's probably why it was kind of all over the place. I ended up settling with it in the downward position because I figured that was probably the most realistic. Because it's a not so happy family time of events. Yeah. And then there was all tied up, and then the last one was walking away. So it's like, at least it ends favorably. The big one for for hostilities, it was talking about making sure you stick to your boundaries and don't let people pull you back into their toxic bullshit. Of course, the card does. The guidebook didn't say toxic bullshit. I put that in there. But yeah, that's totally it. And then for the happy family in reversed, it was talking about there might be some sort of hostilities happening. It's like, yes, that is accurate. So my dad and I got messages around 9:15 this morning from my mom, of course, saying that we needed to clean the house over there because at some point the hospice people were going to be bringing the equipment over, right? So I kind of ignored it at first, to be honest. It's like, I'm just so over the shit. Can we just be done already? Ready to get to the next thing and stop being in this little standstill. That's another thing. I pulled cards for yesterday's energy, just for Sunday, and one of the cards talked specifically about having one foot in the old way of being and one foot in the new, and trying to navigate between the two. It's like, yep, that's where I'm at, but I'm really ready for it to shift to the other end. And I've always been like that. As soon as I think about a change I want to make, like if it's rearranging something, I'm going to do it right as soon as I, am able to. It's like, if I want to do something, there's a reason to it, and I'd like to have it done as soon as possible so we can get to the next thing. And then it's like this, because it's so, because it's my grandfather and his death, and this still hasn't come yet. It's just like, there's so much I still kind of am. I don't even know how to say that. It's like, there's so much that I feel like, to an extent, I have to be available for my family, but at the same time, don't really have to do anything I don't want to. I'll help my grandma out. I'll help, Gracie is a bigger concern on this whole ordeal, I think. And I think that's the biggest thing, is because my great-grandpa's death was what I thought was so traumatic for me, but then I think it was because my mom and my grandpa's toxic energies really latched into me and my brother at that point in time. And, I felt it a lot, and, that's probably exactly why I was so completely terrified of death for the longest time. And it's like, I feel like I've always been facing it, because I had my own suicidal ideation and all this stuff. Oh, that's something I was going to talk about the other day. Okay. After probably my most active attempt, I started going to church again and all that stuff after that, because it's like, what else do you do? It's like I panicked and talked myself out of it, mainly because, the thing that stopped me is I was thinking about these different ways, and it came down to I felt bad about my family finding me in that way, and then the guilt of what it could potentially do to them was the thing that kept me from doing it. And there was a time, I don't remember who she was talking to specifically or how it came up, but she was talking about, she always pissed me off, because if there was somebody that we heard of that had committed suicide, she would go into she'd have these moments where it's like she was trying to be deep and, oh, well, you just never can tell what took somebody to that point, right? And like one day, shortly after my attempt, she looked at me in a way that, like, as I'm reflecting back on it, almost makes me feel like she knew that it was something that I was struggling with as much as I was, or had made some kind of attempt at it. But then also was like, but you can't do anything on that end. That's not an option for you. Like, something about the way she looked at me just like completely pissed me off, to be honest. And it just felt like one of those things where she was telling me she knew, but I was fucked because I couldn't do anything about it, and I couldn't go through with the thing, but I also couldn't really do anything to help myself at that point, and I think that's partly my mission here. Because, I've been trying to navigate how people get into the deep, dark situations that they find themselves in, where they might consider suicide, or, they might get in a really bad relationship and have a really hard time getting out of it, those kind of things. And I feel like that's pretty much my life has been set up to show me these things. And, just like looking at her at that moment, I feel like I sort of set the intention that I will figure this shit out and get to the bottom of it, and, find a way to help other people with what they go through. Because of my own journey, and I can say I've been to a lot of those places. So yeah. But yeah, she just always would look at me like she just was thinking she was something special and she's gonna have this big profound moment, and just who knows what leads people down those paths where they make such a terrible, awful decision and blah blah blah. It's like situations like this. This whole toxic family thing, yeah, that's a big one. When she talked about my grandpa gurgling a little bit ago, it's like, he said something about Gracie, and he said, we'll see. Yeah, it was following one of those, and there's the guilt. kind of comments, and it's like, see, so my brother and I, it's like we're pushing through on the trying to get to the happy family thing and figuring out good things and like being able to help Gracie with what's coming and what's been going on, and it's like there's that element, but then there's this also this big element with my mom where she's trying so hard to pull us right back into it. It's like, nope, not gonna work. It's like, you want to go have sleepovers at their house to give him all of your energy so he knows that you are there to support him and give him your life force. That's on you, but we're not doing that for you. You are going to have to figure your shit out on your own, because you made us figure out a bunch of shit on our own, and it was far more than we ever should have had to deal with growing up. So, yeah. But there's that whole thing. I had this box of stuff. It's got like some vases and things in it, and I wanted to see if there was anything that I wanted to pull out of it. So like I've been doing a lot of cleaning and going through shit, purging shit, but I knew I had this it's a glass fountain, and it's got owls on it, and I've barely ever used it. I might have never used it. I don't know. I got it when I was working at for the hospital, and I saw it on sale and was like, I have to have that because I love little water features. Being on my crab placements, I need water in my environment to be happy. So I got it, and then it's been in storage for a long time, and I know we had it out in the house I was in with my ex before we moved to Alabama, but I don't think I ever had it out after that. It was just kind of in storage. But I found it the other day, and it's currently in my office. I pulled it out of the box last night and set it up. It was like all the other stuff that was in there. It's like, I don't want any of this stuff. So I just put a bunch of other stuff I know I don't want at this point in time. Like, I might want to refer back to it at some point. There's some stuff that it might just get burnt later. But then other little odds and ends that I wanted to hang on to, at least for the time being. And one of the things that I found was from a dog that I adopted from a local rescue. Now, I used to have this tendency to just go look around on Pet Finder, and now I'm thinking that I got into that span of time because I was looking for this little dog. And when I found this little dog, it was the guy I was dating at the time was like super anti-cats, and I was convinced that I was going to marry this dude, and I made the stupid decision of rehoming my 2 cats because I thought he was in the picture forever, right? And also have since made this the decision because I regret it. I didn't immediately regret it, but I still don't like that that's that's still part of my past. I hate that I did that for somebody because I thought that we were going to be together. But I did. So after I did that, I really had the fixation on looking on Pet Finder, and we had 3 dogs, because I was, of course, living with my parents at that time. So we had my Sheltie that we adopted. Well, we got him from a breeder when I was going into my senior year. My mom's Sheltie died on or right around Father's Day, and we were all like super miserable and wanted another dog, so we ended up jumping into finding another one, and it was Chance. And Chance was my baby, and you know, we got him, like I said, June before my senior year in high school, and love that dog. You know, we went from my mom's dog that had died, and then it was my dog that we got, and I definitely needed that dog in my life. We also had 2 other Shelties that we got after my dad's died. His died my senior year in undergrad. And it was one of those, we found out she had cancer, and the vet said probably only had a couple months left. And so we got a couple of puppies. We went after one, but then the other one didn't want us to leave her behind either, so we came out with 2. So, we got the 2 puppies. So after I rehomed the cats, we had these 3 dogs, right? Well, when we got the puppies, or like the 2 other Shelties, because the one dog wasn't going to have much time left, she ended up living another 2 years. So, we had 4 dogs for a while, and then she died in January of my senior year in undergrad. And then started dating the guy the next year, or later that year, and then I think I rehomed the cats in the next spring. After I rehomed the cats, I started, I was obsessing on Pet Finder again, and found this little rat terrier mix that reminded me of a little Chihuahua terrier mix we had that found us when I was a year old. And at first, okay, when I was a year old, at first, my parents didn't want him around me because they weren't sure he was okay, and I was itty bitty. Eventually, it became clear that that little dog was my protector, and so, he was very much my little baby, and he was another one that died when I was 8 that made all that so traumatic in that time frame. So after he died, we got my dad's Sheltie. So honestly, that's kind of a funny connection now that I'm thinking about it, because my dog died, and then we were looking for the next dog. And okay, my dog died real close to Halloween, and he had to be put down. And he had snapped at me, so it was kind of showed it was the end of the line, because I was his person, and then that. So they had him put down, and then in November we were on this mission to find. End of October, beginning of November, I don't know, on this mission to find the next dog. And my dad had always wanted a Sheltie, so we decided we were going to get a Sheltie. And, well, so my parents decided anyway. So we kept going, and then I guess we stopped at one point at a McDonald's, and when my mom and I went into the bathroom before we went to our last stop, which is where we got the next dog, I asked her if they had killed my dog just so they could get a puppy. And Obviously, it bothered my mom that I would pose it that way. But yeah, then we ended up with my dad's Sheltie, the first Sheltie, and so when then she died, and then the rat terrier came along. It's actually kind of interesting connection now that I'm thinking about it. But when I found him on Pet Finder, he reminded me so much of Chip, and it was like, I gotta connect with this dog, right? So I didn't have my 2 cats. I volunteered at the local rescue basically long enough to really get to know this dog. So it wasn't hardly any time at all. It's like I went specifically to check this dog out. And, he was from an animal hoarder. And I think the lady at the rescue said they had gotten this woman down to like 80 dogs when they got him out of there. And they said that she was so, kind of possessive, territorial of her insane amount of dogs that she had on her property, that she would take a bat and try to kill some of them before she would let them be taken away. So there's a whole lot of jacked up in that environment. I mean, obviously I didn't know much of the situation, but I think he was kind of found, I don't know what all his story was, but they got him out of there, but he was like afraid of everything. And that also kind of makes sense now that I'm looking back at it too. Oh man, the connections, y'all, and it's 37 as I'm talking about this on the timer. So, yeah. So, wow. God. Putting all these pieces together, and like bigger things are starting to get pieced together. Now it's like, what? Oh my God. Okay. So anyway, this dog, when I went to the cage that he was in, he had a little sweater on, and he was outside, and it was like getting cold. I want to say it was in November sometime. It was getting cold, and he was outside, and he had like no hair, but he had this little sweater. I mean, he wasn't naked. He had short hair. But I went in his cage, and it's like, this dog, I'm going to connect with this dog. And I sat there, like I sat with my back against the side of the fence, and I was just sitting there, I guess letting him get used to my energy. And he got curious enough to come over, and it took some time, but he came close enough that I could hook my finger in his collar, and I pulled him over and had him sit on my lap for a while. And the lady at the rescue came out, and she was impressed because he'd never been that close to anybody. And he hadn't left. He just, I wasn't keeping him there at that point. I just hooked his collar enough to pull him over so he would sit on my lap. And then she came out and was kind of impressed by it. So I did this foster to keep program. And when I brought him home the first time, we had Chance, Maggie, and Molly. Maggie was my mom's dog, part 2. And I brought him home with me. I mean, it was a few days later, a couple days later or something. And my dogs all took right to him. They were like, this is okay. He was just automatically part of the group. And when my mom came home that day, she saw that he was there, and she was pissed. And she was just and turned the other way, and like he had perked up and was wagging his little nub when she walked in, and then she acted that way and he just sunk. It's like, oh, poor puppy. He wasn't a puppy by any means, he was a little man, but he was, yeah. So my mom's dog took right to him too, and it was so funny seeing them together because he would always curl up really close to her especially, but also to her sister, and to the other male, but not as often with him. But he took right to Maggie, and I called her Bugaboo. So if I randomly say Bug, it's referring to Maggie. She came Buggy somewhere along the line, and then that dog probably had the most nicknames of any dog that we've ever had. Although Ziva might be close. Anyway, it was to the point where we ended up going to visit my brother and sister-in-law when they were in Texas, and you know, he was good in hours at that point, but we had a friend that was going to stay with the dogs. It's like, we can't leave him behind, he's not gonna handle that well, and so he came with us. But then we also brought Maggie with us because, you know, that was his I always said it was his little girlfriend. So they were always together, and you know, they got to experience the beach together. It was the first time we ever took any of our pets on vacation, so that was kind of a different thing. But my brother and sister-in-law had a dog at the time, so they also brought her on that trip. So we had we had an interesting time. We stayed at it was a hotel on a military base. We went down to Corpus Christi, and pets were allowed in the room, so we ended up having all of them with us. It was awesome. Well, we had 3 with us. Maggie and Chance had to stay behind. Chance was the biggest one, so it took up a lot more space. So yeah, so those 2 stayed with our friend, and then, was it our friend or my cousin? Yeah, one of them. I don't know. I feel like it might have been Jeff, but he's the friend. So anyway, the reason I went into that story is because I found the paperwork from when I adopted him. His name was Joe when he was at the rescue. It's like, well, that's not gonna work. And he became, I don't know why I went with Wiley, like Wile E. Coyote, but eventually I started calling him Doogie. And I was like, that was the most fitting name for that dog, honestly. It was a little whatchamacallit. So I just called him Doogie. Because he was like so out of place and yet exactly where he was supposed to be, kind of a thing. And it was funny watching all the dogs together. You know, I realized at one point, you know, that particular 4-pack taught me so much. Of course, 3 Shelties and then a Rat Terrier. So I think the other day I talked about how it's like there's 3 things, and then there's the next one thing, and they're connected, but it's like a shift to show me something different. And there's like a few different scenarios where that works out in my life, but I just had that thought too. So Doogie, the little Rat Terrier, the paperwork. Okay. So the paperwork I found today that I put in the box, I noticed that the time that the lady put the information into the computer was 11:11. It's like, well, there we go. We have that again. It's like, so was that like a little trigger point for me? And it was something like slightly shifting things on my journey and showing that I was exactly where I was supposed to be all over again. because I definitely needed that dog in my life. And like, he was so afraid of everything. And now, like, I look back at that and it's like, that dog, I think, was largely the reason I found courage to do some things for my own life. But it was like a reflection of like all the sheer terror of doing anything, because I was afraid of doing anything wrong and being misunderstood or whatever. And so I just mostly didn't do anything, right? And so I adopted him. And then, you know, there was the time that, you know, of course, Maggie, I realized later, like, I saw her in action. This is a little story I was going to tell. But I realized that she was the pack leader, and it was like Molly and Chance would occasionally butt heads, and it's like they were always kind of, I guess, wanting to be the pack leader, but then Maggie actually was. And, you know, she showed me this because, like, Chance was laying on the floor one day and Molly got too close and they started just growling at each other. And she just walks over quietly, calmly, stands in between them, and just, like, it was like all energy. It's like she was just there. She was calm. She ignored what they were bickering about. And eventually they both just kind of sighed and walked off. You know, Molly walked off and Chance just looked the other way, and that was it. It's like, that dog is clearly the pack leader. It's like, I wouldn't have thought that, but that energy and that what she just showed me, that right there showed that she was the one that was actually in charge. So that was kind of an interesting thing. But it's funny that she was my mom's dog, but now I feel like that was also because she could manage my mom's erratic energy, you know, and like where my mom pulled me and my brother into her drama all the time, you know, Maggie affected my mom's energy and made her calm down. So I remember thinking at one point, because they ended up all being kind of old together. It's like, oh, how is this going to work out when they start dying off, you know? And I feel bad in thinking that, in admitting to this, but this is what came up. And I was least connected to Molly, so she was kind of, I think she would have been my brother's dog if he was around, but he had joined the Air Force, so he wasn't around. But when he was around, she absolutely loved him. But otherwise, she was kind of my dad's dog, but kind of seemed out of place. And I think it was because she would have been my brother's. So maybe that was why we couldn't leave her behind. He'd already gone into the Air Force, and, you know, she had a kind of similar energy to him. But yeah, she always seemed kind of out of place, and I think it was because he wasn't there. So when I started thinking about that, it's like, okay, so Molly probably first, and it's like, and then Doogie. I love that little doggy. Such a little clown. And then Chance, and then Maggie, I guess. It's like, but it's like I wasn't trying to make that be the way it was happening. I was just trying to figure out what would be least traumatic in dealing with something that was going to happen eventually anyway. And it was a whole thing. Okay, so Molly actually ended up dying on my cousin's birthday, the cousin that does not come around the family, hardly at all. My back seat's farting again. So it was April 30th of 2013 she died. In October, Doogie died. October the same year. And Molly started, like, it's like her back end started giving out, like her legs would just slide either way out from under her, and she wasn't able to keep up on, like, when we'd go on walks and stuff, and then she just started looking really confused. And there was when this all happened, I was married and living a few miles away. It was like a 12-minute drive, so it wasn't real far. But I had gotten Ziva, got her in March of 2013. She was like, "You're talking about me." I started petting her too. I got Ziva in March with my ex, and at the end of April, Molly was not doing so well, and there was a day. I was licking one. No, Tad's licking his butt, his hip. Anyway, there was a day where she was still having issues. I don't know how long the back end issue was a problem, but it was a problem for a few weeks anyway. And, it started just being the back end, and then, it started being all the legs and all of that. And she, there was a day my dad had a doctor's appointment, and Mom said she didn't want to go with him because she felt like she needed to stay with Molly, but at the same time he wanted her to go, so she went. And I was like, well, I'll take Ziva over there and we'll go hang out. So I was on my way over there when they left their house. And so, mind you, it's only like a 10-minute span of time where nobody was there. And when they left her, she was laying under a tree in the backyard, and she looked really happy. And they asked my aunt to keep an eye on her, since my aunt lives next door practically. The back of their house looks at our backyard, so they had her kind of keep an eye and make sure everything was okay. By the time I got there, she was having a seizure in the backyard, and I called my mom and let her know what was going on, and I picked Molly up and took her back in their room at one point and had her laying on the bed. It's like the entire time I was there, she didn't know me. But when I picked her up, she like whipped back, and I thought she was gonna try to bite me at one point, but it was this whole ordeal, and like she just kept having like these seizures, just almost one right after the other. And my aunt called because she didn't see Molly in the backyard anymore, and I told her what was going on, so she came over, and I had the other 4 dogs at this point, because there was Chance, Doogie, Maggie, and Ziva, and I had them blocked off out of the bedroom while she was doing her thing. The entire time I was there, she had no idea who I was, so we ended up having her put down that night. And as I'm thinking about it now, I'm kind of wondering if like Maggie's energy might have helped that situation. Maybe she would have made the shift on her own, but I don't know. Anyway, so she died that day, and then yeah. Let me just get on a roll again and just do the thing. Cry some more, damn it. So October, Doogie was kind of acting kind of off, and he kept trying to hide out by himself, and I would not leave him alone. And I knew what he was trying to do, and obviously I was upset about it. So he's trying to be alone, and I didn't let him be alone at all. But he ended up, God, it was like, I'm wanting to say it was the first time that Peyton Manning played against the Colts when he went to Denver. All I'm seeing is orange right now because I was so like upset about the other thing. My ex was like all about wanting to watch this game, and he'd been talking it up for like the longest time. And then I wouldn't leave the dog alone because I knew he was trying to do something, and I picked him up at one point and carried him outside for a minute, and he just stood there. And when I picked him up to carry him back in the house, he died in my arms. I was a hot mess, but was also thrilled to death that he went on his own and didn't make me have to make that decision or anything. He had congestive heart failure, and it seemed like once we started treating his cough, he got worse. It's like, should we not have treated it? I don't know. But yeah, like, he went from coughing, and then it went just downhill in a hurry. But yeah, it was like, that was, I think, the one moment where my ex showed that he wasn't entirely bad, because he didn't even he didn't stop to ask any questions other than where's the shovel. He got up and left the game that he was so excited to watch all that time. So he like kind of made himself, that was his redeeming moment. And he went out with all of us and dug the hole, and we buried him in the backyard. So yeah. Then the next year in October, of course, that's when they talk about the thinning of the veil and all that stuff. I think that's a big part of why, like, I've always liked fall, but preferred spring a little bit more. Now I appreciate fall a lot more than I used to, and I think a big part of why I didn't appreciate it as much was it seemed like there were a lot of dogs that died in October, because there was Chip, there was Doogie, there was Chance, and Chip honestly was enough for a long time that he had died in that month, so it was terrible for me for a long time. And then the next ones, and Chance and Doogie went along in that time frame too. Chance was especially hard for me because he was basically my dog, and so my mom told me that I had to make that decision of when it was time by myself, and I resented her for a long time for that. Because like, he had this spot on his elbow that was tore up because he would plop down on whatever, like whether it was the concrete, the laminate flooring in the house, whatever, and it just like there was this kind of a scabby spot there for a while, and then it like busted open, then it got infected, and it was just a whole icky thing, and we had to like switch these bandages on his elbow for a while, and it stunk so bad. And there were like some things that were going on with it, and it's just like, it got to a point where it felt like it was time, right? So Mom made me make that decision by myself, and yeah, I hated that. So like, for that, we took him to the vet, and the vet was kind of talking us through what was happening, and it was like, there was this brief moment, everything in me screamed to tell him to stop, and then then he was gone. It was like, just, fuck. You know, it was just like that very moment when he was talking about what he was doing, and, you know, gave him the shot to relax him, and then, you know, I had this little panic moment, and, like, wanted to tell him to stop, and then, as soon as I'm thinking through this little, wanting him to stop and not go through with it, then he says the dog's already gone. It's like, so, and now, you know, just had this little moment. You're just like, what are you doing? I just had this brief thought of, how did I get to this point in this video? And like, it makes perfect sense, because like, you know, my grandfather's still doing this thing where he's still not going, you know, and then, you know, I'm talking about all these other times with, you know, death that were traumatic for me and whatnot, or, you know, like the dogs, most of those weren't that traumatic, but I still struggled with it, but it was still something that, you know, I just knew it was going to happen at some point, but Chance, I struggled with, especially because I had to make the decision to do it by myself, and I kind of felt betrayed, honestly. And now, like, even that, I feel like part of what is so, I think, hurt so much on that end was my mom made me make this decision on my own, and yet I've never been able to do anything else on my own as far as like actually learning how to live my own life or anything. It's like a completely new territory, trying to figure this shit out now, you know. But that was like, I think that was the Tazzy quit that. That was just really felt like a sense of kind of abandonment at the fact that she made me do that by myself, because obviously that's not an easy decision to make. It really sucks no matter how you look at it. So, Tazzy, you want some? There's a water thing. Now there, slurp, slurp, slurp. You want more? No? Deeply, want some? Deeply. But yeah, I'm feeling like there's a lot of layers that are still getting unraveling just by me processing through this part right now. You know, but it's always been in dealing with matters of death, you know, and then here we are, you know, with the old man that's been obsessing over it for so long and still not doing it because he's so afraid of it, and then realizing all these other times when I've had to deal with the death of someone or something that I cared about. Just like an unraveling for all of that. You know, it just goes to, I think, support that whole idea of, like, I've talked many times about how, you know, as particularly the Michael and Faith card from the Kyle Gray Divine Masters deck talks about, consider yourself divinely planted. You are exactly where you're at for a reason. You're supposed to be there, and trust the process. There's been a whole lot of trust the process the past forever, but now especially in like the past year, as I'm trying to unwind some of this chaos from my family and what I've learned growing up, and navigating this whole thing. Yeah. You know, and like, you know, my brother and sister-in-law had a doodle that I think he was like 3, and they had to have him put down because he ate something he wasn't supposed to. And I was going over there, like, he was staying out with my sister-in-law's mom because she was there during the day and everything, and good company for her. And I would go over there to potty him, and then when they got the Basset Hound, her as well. And one day I was like, oh, there's something with this dog. It's like, I don't know what's going on, but he just looked at me, and it was like a really sad kind of a look. And it's like, there's something happening, and you need to have this dog checked out. And I don't think it was that night kind of a thing. I think they had to wait till the next day maybe, but by the time they got him to the vet, they had to have him put down, and they said they thought he probably ingested something that he shouldn't have. And yeah. He had gotten into something that we knew about, but I think there was more that he didn't know about, because he was notorious for eating shit he shouldn't. And, you know, and I took one of mine to the vet, and it was a different vet. But when I was talking to her about their situation with their doodle, she said every time she sees that she has a doodle in her caseload and it's coming in for some kind of vomiting or diarrhea or that kind of issue, she cringes, because they are notorious for getting into stuff they're not supposed to and eating it. And current doodle is very much that way as well. But she, you know, she's got mainly, like, you know, when they go and buy a dozen donuts from one of the local places, and she gets to it because she's tall and they forgot to not put it on the counter, so she and the Basset helped themselves because she pulled it down for them to share. Yeah, that kind of thing. But she also gets locked up during the day because she's proven herself to be untrustworthy. So there's that. Yeah. Didn't really know where this was going to go today. Oh, man. Yeah, it was kind of funny because it was that thing that I found the paperwork with Doogie, and then noticed that it had 11/11 on it. And it's like, I feel like it probably stood out to me at the time that I got it, but it wasn't something that I really paid attention to back then. It was just like, oh, hey, repeating numbers, cool. You know, and now it's like, ooh, that means something. You know, and a lot of what I've seen talks about, like, 11/11 is like some sort of light worker initiation thing, also a twin flame thing, but it seems like it's cueing certain things for me that are like cueing me to pay attention to what's getting ready to come up. And I think that's kind of what it's been today, because I think that whole storytelling process is completely relevant to wrapping up this cycle with my grandfather. Yeah. However all that's gonna go. My mom's friend asked me how he was doing, or what the plan was, all that. The friend from forever. And my mom started watching her daughter when I was in, I think it was closing out my first grade year and her second grade year. But she's like 6 months older than me. And we were really close for a while, and our moms were always really close. And yeah, we've gone our separate ways since then. But, you know, her mom and my mom are still really close. And, you know, I have done a lot of pet sitting for their family, and all that stuff, and house sitting, and frequently get to borrow the pool when I get some of those tasks. So yeah, they had a cat that died, I think, earlier this year, if I remember correctly. Why wouldn't it be this year? Everything else is this year. You know, like when I got that card last year and it said consider the cycle you're in, and I just had the sense that it was going to be a big death year, and it's like, well, it's proven out on that so far. Yeah. Anyway, she sent me a message wanting to know if the plan was still the same as it was last time she talked to my mom, which I guess she must have talked to her yesterday. But she was letting me know that they were coming home, so I didn't need to check on their house anymore. So also that. But I told her what was going on. And the other day she had sent me a message, and I don't remember what exactly she said. Or she said something, my mom sent her a message about my grandpa that had scared her for a minute, and then she asked how my mom was doing. And I think I worded it to her with, she would be glad to know you were scared or whatever. And, you know, I kind of told her some things that me and my brother aren't acting the way on this that mom feels that we're supposed to, and so we're disappointing her because we're not acting the way she raised us to. And she was kind of like, I understand all sides of this. It's like, okay. But my mom's other friend, you know, she knew there's been a lot going on, so she and her daughters went in and they got us a gift card for like Uber Eats, so we can have some kind of meal that we don't have to worry about anything on, because they have a gift card they sent us. So I got that kind of figured out. We haven't used it yet, but it's there. But when she did ask me the other day how my mom was doing, and she said something, and I started typing a message that was like, she's not gonna want to hear this. You know, so it's just like, back it down. And I just said, thanks. So I think she saw that I had been typing, and then all that came through was thanks. So I don't know what she thought on that one. She's the one who lost her husband earlier this year. So yeah, it's been what a year. Yeah, it looks like the hospice stuff is being offloaded at the house and all that stuff. Hi. The other one. Yep, CB, where's your head? There's your head. She's resting. Got her little shirt on because it's cold out. She's like, oh, mom's petting me again. Okay. Yeah. It was that friend's husband that, you know, is at his celebration of life gathering. I had that one little thing where I got to play with the energies. It was we ended up sitting with another friend that she and my mom had gone to high school with, and her husband. And you know, we're sitting there and under this canopy thing outside, and the sun's beating down on the friend's husband, and so he comes over to the other side of the canopy and is standing kind of behind me and my mom. And at one point, like, his energy just started really making me uncomfortable. Like, he wasn't doing anything per se that made him creepy or anything. It was just something about his energy felt imposing, and I didn't like it. And then I started with trying to, you know, like, imagine pushing my energy out to kind of fill the space. And like, I'd had somebody talk to me about it at one point in time. It's like we hadn't really, Lenita mentioned it for one of the classes that as something we would do in the future, but I ended up not going. I stopped going to that class before we got to that lesson, but also I stopped going altogether for a while. But then I also, since that wasn't working, visualizing it wasn't working, I went back to that dream where my twin flames energy, where we connected, and I realized that, my ex was like a leech on my energy, and the twin flames said, if you need help, let me know. And so it's like, just kind of inside to myself was like, hey, and even said his name in there, and it's like, so this dude's kind of making me uncomfortable, and if we could like get him to at least go away, maybe just go to the other side of the table again, that'd be great. And it's like within like 20 to 30 seconds, this guy went back over to the other side of the table and was sitting there with his wife, and within like 5 minutes he looked really uncomfortable and anxious, and like all at once looked at his wife and was like, we need to go. It was just kind of like, cool. That actually works. What? So kind of playing with the energies that way, and now it's like, oh, all I have to do is just like kind of turn to this other aspect within me and it gets it handled. Cool. I like this. Yeah, but I'm sure there'll be plenty other opportunities to play with that some more. Disregard my freaking hat hair. Yeah, this is all sorts of jacked up today. Oh, that's another thing I was thinking. Okay, so I've been feeling lately like, okay, I started looking at this. I realized part of the color that I put in the other day isn't sticking real well, and I think it's just because there's so much damage from being over processed along the way. And so it's like, I really want to get a haircut, just because it looks like crap, it feels like crap. This up here feels great. That's been less processed. But I was thinking about it, and of course I was taking that one little lady that died in the past couple weeks, when I was driving her to her appointments. A lot of them were hair appointments, and she went to this place I didn't know about. But I really liked the energy of the lady that did her hair. And I've been thinking I need to set up an appointment with her. And it's kind of the thing where it felt kind of weird momentarily was the girl that I've been going to is a girl that everybody in the family practically goes to. Well, not everybody, but like, okay, so it's my one cousin's friend, and I don't know how they knew each other or where they got connected, but my cousin will drive the 45 minutes to get her hair done by her because, they're friends at this point, and my aunt and uncle go there, my grandma goes there. I'm supposed to take her there tomorrow, and I've been going there. My mom's gone there on occasion, but I've been feeling like I need to disconnect on that one and go to this other lady. But it's still that weird shift of, I want to get a haircut, so everybody in my family is going to know I got my haircut. So if I say I didn't go to that place, then it's going to be like this whole weird thing, or then they tell her that I went somewhere else, and I don't know. But it's like, I think part of that is because, my family's energy and who they connect with and all that stuff. And like, I feel like this other lady, I don't know, I just really liked her energy, and I feel like I'm supposed to go there at least the once. But yeah, it's snowing. I've kind of been watching it accumulate on the road, but it didn't really register what was happening. So yeah, that's a thing that happens. And it's like, hold on, enough that it's sticking, right? So yeah, but it's just now registering that now, hey, look at all that snow that's kind of accumulating there, and I guess maybe I should go home and before it gets real super slick. Nothing's stuck here lately. We'll have this and then it'll be gone tomorrow or even later today. But this is the most it's appeared to be sticking. And of course, the day that my grandfather's coming back home. Yeah, for that whole ordeal. I don't know. I'm sure that plays in there somehow too. I guess I should make notes in my little twin flame journal here in a little bit about what that aspect too. Because obviously I got a lot more to write about since I've been making all these other connections. And, you know, like every now and then my dad asks how's the writing's going, because he knows that that's the big thing that I keep threatening to do is write the book. There's a book I'm supposed to write, you know? And it's like, right now it's just journaling. And so right now it's navigating this process and especially this closing out this cycle and doing healing work on that end so I can release it and really be done with it, finally. Since the cycle has been forever. Yeah. Anyway, I'm sure my dogs would like to eat. Gidget keeps looking at me. She never knows what I'm gonna do. Well, she's my water sign pooch, so she might be more in tune with what I'm thinking than I thought. But yeah. She always knows when I'm like getting ready to get up, and she always starts fussing at me because she gotta spend time with her, and so much cuddling has to be done in the morning before we can happily go about our day. And she doesn't like sharing the attention, but as long as she gets her attention first, she's more content, I think. What do you think? Anyway, I guess I'll wrap this up. As always, I appreciate you, and until the next time, see ya.